before. We have been here before. And for those that are not present to it, yesterday was probably, was one of the darkest days in our nation's history. And I think the reasons, which I would be happy to speak into for hours, go far beyond the storming of the Capitol building. And in 1978, I remember sitting in gas lines, and in 79, going into 1980, and sitting in those gas lines for an incredibly long period of time. And a movie came out named Americathon, which was a spoof on America, its debt, and the fact that somebody, a Native American, held the debt in America, was going to foreclose on the country. And it was profoundly impactful. It was funny, but it was profoundly impactful because of how real it was. And to sit there in that space as a child, and I was the oldest child, grandchild, great-grandchild, and I was around adults all the time. And so I was very present to adult concepts, and it was real. The doubt, the hopelessness. And I remember in 1980, with my grandma Rose, my dad's mom, I was sitting on election night, and I remember her crying when Ronald Reagan was elected president, because she was a Democrat and she loved Jimmy Carter, and Richard Nixon was evil and Ronald Reagan was therefore evil. And it was very present for me, like, Ronald Reagan is evil. I love Grandma Rose, like, he's evil, you know? And then I grew up in the 1980s. The stories I tell from high school athletics were on the back end of movies like Rocky IV and him beating the Soviet to win. And I remember running out of a movie theater with my friends and feeling like we were on top of the world and could do anything, as I was a freshman in high school and the movie was out. And I certainly remember sitting there when the miracle happened in 1980. And I remember being present. I listened to it by myself on the radio live, and I watched it in replay when it was televised the next day. And I had tears pouring down my face, present to the impossibility of those 20 young men who were college all-stars beating the Soviet dream team. It would have been the equivalent in the most heightened, politically charged environment imaginable. Like, we literally were present in 1980 to a nuclear war occurring. It was real. Movies were made about it. Red Dawn, came out shortly thereafter. We were present to a nuclear war on a daily basis. When I went to Columbia, right before the wall came down in 89, I was a freshman in 88. I took a course in nuclear armament. Like, there was a political science course at Columbia University, part of my major, on nuclear armament and nuclear war. That's what was present. And to think in 1980, we beat the Soviets. By 1989, the wall comes down and freedom reigns. The world is different. And of course, there's all kinds of challenges. But Tyler and I walked the wall on a Tony Robbins Business Mastery trip to Amsterdam. We jumped on a plane, flew to Germany for the day, had no plans, just wandered around and experienced it. And I was sharing with Tyler, I'm sharing with Tyler that this was real. Like, the fear, the pain, the upset, the dynamics. And leaning into this as we are at Unblinded, because the choices, of course, are we could avoid the topic, we could leave it there lightly. Yesterday was an atrocity. And there's so many layers and depths and levels of things to think about and talk about. And I'm asking for your permission that we lean in for a minute in a non-political conversation, but in a conversation about truth. And truth is complicated. And here's the first admission about yesterday for me. When Tyler told me it was during the Real Raw, I stopped the Real Raw and said, people are in the Capitol building. Like, people have taken the Capitol building. Somebody was shot and they died. Somebody died yesterday. And people were in the Capitol building, the hallmark of freedom and democracy and power and strength of the United States, the most powerful nation on earth for a very long time. And the Capitol building had been taken. And the feeling, because I'm present to context, maybe at an above average level, it was immediately shocking, gut wrenching, heartbreaking. And my mission is within 20 minutes, as I was talking to Tyler about it, and news reports are flying and comments are there, and the president said this and incited the violence. And I'm like, well, what did he say exactly? What was the sentence? And I'm listening to it. And I'm saying, well, he said strength. He didn't say that. And I'm sitting in the space of that dissection, and I'm finding myself going back to, lying, dynamics and things that were said about Russia collusion. And I'm thinking about Benghazi and Barack Obama coming out and lying that it wasn't a terrorist attack and his people saying it. And so what I'm present to this morning is this is just a disgusting family feud. And yesterday was a disgusting culmination of the disgustingness of that family feud. Because when you're in a family feud and it's like, you know what? But you know what? No, this is where this started. Aunt Sadie said, and then Uncle Johnny did, and then you said, and then I said, and wait, that's not like this. It's like that. And that's what's happening. And as I sat and listened to President-elect Joe Biden, and I sat and I listened to Donald Trump, my heart hurt deeply. And I was effing enraged. Because in hearing Donald Trump not stop this, I can't even speak into how horrifically suboptimal that behavior was. And as I listened to Joe Biden, my level 5 listening told me I have gained weapons through this. And the words were all right, but I heard him. And if we stand for anything here at Unblinded, what we have to stand for is truth and unity. And the reason people feel emotional when they watch all those players step up to the podium is because it's about truth and unity. And I can already see the clips in the next Senate election or congressional elections of people in the Capitol building being used as propaganda to vote against Republican candidates. I could see them, and they'll be there. And it is so wildly untruthful that 99% of Democrats and 99% of Republicans are anything but phenomenal human beings. Perfectly imperfect and phenomenal human beings. And what's truly wrong at the core of all this is the divisive rhetoric and insanity. The fact that we went through Russia collusion is offensively ridiculous and factually incorrect. And this election was not stolen from Donald Trump. And both of those were horrific lies. And I will take on any taker on those subjects for $1 million bet that Russia collusion with the Republican Party did not cause Hillary Clinton to lose, and this election was not stolen from Donald Trump. But the more important question is how simple it is to be lifted up by what we saw in Miracle, and how simple it is to be wrapped up into propaganda and lies. It's how Nazi Germany was taken. It's how Nazi Germany was taken. And when you think about Nazi Germany being taken and the correlations to Donald Trump, I would say, yeah, those are interesting thoughts. I would also say that any lie that's accepted, like when FDR, a Democrat, attempted to stack the Supreme Court, not just with his people, he tried to change the constitutional law to put more Supreme Court justices on. Whenever anybody stands in the way of democracy or freedom. And FDR did many great things as well. But whenever anyone, Ronald Reagan, lying about Iran-Contra, but then us not being present to the fact that our government has to make deals with drug dealers. And they make the best decisions that they can to keep us safe, we hope, and sometimes to make biased decisions to help their friends. And the level of discernment it takes to think of the complex issues of leadership and when they're being done authentically and inauthentically are incredibly complex micro distinctions in reality. And the greatest thing that I could propose today, and we're going to step into a few things factually to attempt to help you put your heart and mind at ease. Okay? We step into a few things factually, or the biggest thing I would propose is having love and empathy. Love and empathy for everybody. I have love and empathy for every American today who wants the best for America, which I think is 99+%. We have different ideas of how to get there. We have different agreements. And I will be rooting for President-elect Joe Biden every single day. I'll be hoping and praying that every decision he makes is his best decision on what he thinks is right for this country, without self-interest, without a desire to make sure his allies get elected next time, but instead what's best for America. Just like I will for every president, left or right, every member of Congress, left or right. But we would all be very foolish and naive, as the beautiful songs of the late 60s and throughout the 70s told us. And Bruce Springsteen said, to have blind faith in our leaders. Bruce Springsteen, quote, "Blind faith in our leaders will get us killed, whether they're from the left or the right." And what we need to stand for is truth. And we need to stand for truth about the complexity of decisions, that there's a lot of things that we don't understand about the 17 layers that go into every decision that our government has to make, but also to not allow that to have us not pay attention and or just be swept up in the rhetoric. So for a couple of minutes, I'm going to bring back Tyler, my son Tyler, and I had a lot of conversation about this yesterday. And I guess, Ty, first of all, thanks for all the hard work you've been doing on this topic, and how much you feel about it, because you're the person that called me and said, "Dad, do you understand what's happening right now?" And the fact that you care that much means the world to me, and love our country that much. So how you feeling, bud, with what's going on, and what is present for you?
Sad. There's no other word really that, describes how I'm feeling, but sad, distraught, confused, scared. I think that goes for everyone on this call, who has seen the news in the last 24 hours and loves this country. You can't have looked at what happened yesterday and love this country and not feel the way that I do, I think. What's present for me is really just where we go from here. Because, the sun came up today and it will come up tomorrow. And Joe Biden will be president in 2 weeks. And it doesn't seem like America is on any sort of track. And it hasn't for months now, really. And so that's what I'm present for, is it feels like the wheels are off the bus. Yeah. And it's scary.
Well, I will say to you, bud, and I will say to everybody, we have been here before.
Yes.
Before many, many times. And it's when people like the team in Miracle on Ice, and that may sound overstated, it's not. I was there. I lived it. And what that one period did is set off a chain reaction, I believe, of incredible moments. And this has been recognized by other historians, because it doesn't take a lot to restore confidence and belief. And I can assure you, with love from my heart, that if your primary motive is to make the left wrong or the right wrong, that you're part of the problem. You're a beautiful soul, well meaning, right? But it's a cry for help and it's part of the problem. It's people like Herb Brooks who didn't even want to make a stand for anything larger than mastery and excellence. And his position was, listen, this is a hockey game. This is not a political thing. And he was right and wrong. And what it was mostly was being a beacon of light and hope for the impossibility of something being created and happening. And that would be my overarching message for today. Like, how can we are leaders, like really, and we are causing leadership. And what is your message? What is the message that you will bring forth today? Because the nation and people need your message. And what will it be? It'll be, yeah, dude, like how effed up was that? Like, we know that. Now, if it's this could never happen again, and here's how we prevent it from happening again. And the idea isn't to say, I told you so, to get one up on somebody in your family or a friend, because that's not helping anybody. It's not helping anybody. And we have to be a beacon of leadership if we're actually going to make the world a greater place. Like, these are the moments, like there's an opportunity. There's a moment of opportunity, not like opportunity, like let's do something for ourselves. There's an open opportunity to do good, to help, to support, and make things happen. And I would feel remiss if we did not lean in on this. I've had the privilege of working in complex webs of lies and fraud and theory. And for the sake of time, I'm going to ask you to accept, and I'll give you a couple social proofs, but accept my ability to track down evidence and to look through things. One, I figured out that a guy was a Ponzi schemer in Florida at $1 billion level who blew out the birthday candles on the cake of the governor of Florida, blew out the birthday candles, and would have been, had John McCain won the presidency, he would have been the Attorney General of Florida by most accounts, Scott Rothstein. I was the first person to report him to the FBI when nobody else believed something was wrong. In the two top jury verdicts, in both cases, the judges initially said nothing was wrong. Nothing had happened. Like, those things occurred, right? And our evidence, though, was overwhelming. And when things happen and go wrong, and you dig into them, and there's conspiracies have evidence, especially when they're widespread. And there are text messages, because people are dopey. There's emails, there's electronic trackings, because you must communicate. And to have had a conspiracy at the level with the numbers of votes that would have been necessary to change the outcome of this election, in the number of states there were, and the number of vote differential, there would have had to be many, I will define many, by at least 100 people involved. Now, every conspiracy that I've ever cracked or been involved in that's had at least 3 people involved has had all kinds of tracking around it. 100 people would have to communicate electronically. And that's only the beginning of the problems, okay? The Attorney General of the United States, appointed by President Trump, said that there is not enough evidence that would rise to that would have caused, or enough evidence of fraud that would have caused a change in the outcome of the election. This is a math problem. There was certainly, I am sure, some ballots from dead people and other voting. And I'm going to ask to pause, because if you're turning off your listening right now, understand I voted for Donald Trump. I did not want Joe Biden to be president. And I could talk about that forever. And if you don't know my heart, by now you don't know my heart. So I am speaking into truth. When Donald Trump was elected in 2016, Tyler and I were not celebrating like yay, like we were like breathing a sigh of relief. Tyler, am I exaggerating how thankful we were that Donald Trump won this election originally?
No, I was thrilled.
Yeah.
I have all my merch upstairs. You know, I was a fan even.
Yeah. So no media convinces me of what to think. I am so used to analysis of lies and layers of lies and conspiracy. I used to think that JFK was killed in a conspiracy. I've done not amazing, I've done extensive amount of research. Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone shooter. The bullet made sense. The JFK movie by Oliver Stone has like 100 lies in it. It's unbelievable that he made that movie. Like it is literally crazy. And so I am present to these realities. And I am present to the fact that the people who acknowledged that Barack Obama acknowledged his mentors were have made statements and taught at universities in America, professing that they align with communist beliefs. Like those are true statements. What that means, I don't know, right? Like, but these are facts. Okay. It is a fact that each and every one of the lawsuits. Well, Tyler, would you give a recount quickly of the status of the lawsuits that were filed? Like overall, how many lawsuits basically, and what's the status?
The last report I read was 57 like legal actions were taken in 5 or 6 different states. I have the info here if we want to get really specific, but over 50 have already been withdrawn, denied, or dismissed. And the rest are more bookkeeping questions about deadlines. There's no there's nothing really pertaining to fraud or stuffing ballot boxes or anything left in our courts. It's just not there. Everything of that nature has been thrown out.
We reviewed the allegations of a mail truck filled with ballots. There's a completely plausible explanation for that. We reviewed suitcases under tables, a completely plausible explanation for that. We reviewed the not only plausible, I mean, they have suitcases that the government uses as sealed ballot box holders.
Yeah, they were just boxes with wheels on them that
Right.
just looked like suitcases. And then, yeah,
Right.
says how easy it is.
And the numbers that it would take to change the election, because the electoral college vote, Tyler, is what to what?
306 to
230?
232.
32. So that would have, there's a whole bunch of things that would have happened, but by my count, it would have had to have 3 states change. 3 states, right? And I think in the popular vote, well, I don't want to get into that issue, actually. 3 states would have had to change. 3 states. And in Georgia, the smallest differential, I think, was Georgia. It was still 12,000 vote differential. And if you look into some of the legal actions, what were some of the legal actions that were singularly filed, they were about changing. One of the actions actually said that it is unconstitutional to have mail-in votes at all. So like one of these 57 legal actions was predominantly placed on a desire to just outlaw mail-in ballots as unconstitutional. But like the regulations and laws are set already. And I spoke with people I love and care about yesterday in this movement. And I'm like, hey, do you think the election was stolen fraudulently? They're like, yeah. I'm like, amazing. Tell me something I don't know. Like, tell me what happened. Like, tell me a fact, please. Like, like there's like a mail truck. And I'm like, okay, like, tell me the story of what happened. Well, I don't know. Well, there were these like mail-in ballots of dead people. Okay, awesome. Tell me what you know about it. I don't know. That's not good enough. You're good enough. You're amazing. But for us as a nation to carry forward to the world the proposition that our presidential election was stolen, like, what does that say to the world? And if it's true, oh my God. But it isn't true. It isn't true. And please don't let that upset you because I love you enough and I care enough to tell the truth. And Gina was there and Bella was there. We weren't in the same space on that election night. But I was so sad on election night. And I couldn't believe what was happening. And the election wasn't stolen. The votes that were counted late came in from inner city environments that were overwhelmingly and predominantly in favor of Joe Biden. And yes, more people voted, and more people voted by mail in, and people galvanized energy. And yes, Joe Biden didn't campaign a lot, and he wasn't, in my estimation, particularly impressive in what he did. And there was a lot of stuff that went on to cause a lot more people to vote. 3,000 people are dying in America a day from COVID. You know, people care. There was an amazing galvanized campaign to come against Donald Trump. And when I won the jury verdict in Arizona, we won the jury verdict in Arizona, we realized that that case was about making the other guys wrong and look bad, much more than making our client look good. And that's what Joe Biden and the Democrats did. And very candidly, there was a lot of mistakes that Donald Trump made. I wrote 2 different times in my life to the Trump campaign, Trump people, with messages through indirect lines of saying, let me help. This is horrific communication. This is crazy. I didn't say crazy, but that was the messaging. So I, as somebody who believed in many, not all, but many of Donald Trump's policies, was horrified by his communication from day one. Horrified. I loved him leaning into truth. I was horrified by how he did it because we have a formula. And we know that sarcasm, cynicism are negative vibrational dynamics that don't open listening. And we know what does open listening. So it is not shocking. Like, yes, Donald Trump was an outsider, and I believe we need people from outside our government. We need people that are not career congressional people. We need term limits in Congress. We need campaign finance reform. We need all of it. And it is a swamp, in my opinion, that needs to be cleaned out. But that's different than how we talk about it. That's different than how we go about causing the leadership to make that occur. I love the idea of cleaning out the swamp. I love the idea of destroying corruption in our government. I love the idea of new people and fresh ideas and enlightenment and light. I love it. I live it. I cry every time I see the end of Miracle. Every single time. I did this morning. I had tears. I love light. I love change. I love hope. I love possibility. And it is not caused from lower vibrational communication. It is just not. And I was excited about the disruption and what it took to become elected president. And I had hope that when Donald Trump was elected president, that the communication would become enlightened, unifying, positive. And what I saw in him was the possibility of coming from outside the system to disrupt. And I was excited about it because there's a lightning bolt on my hat. And as it went on, it wasn't unifying. And it was certainly confronting, but it was how we confront. And so we got what we got. And if you're happy about Joe Biden being president, amazing. I hope you're right. And if you're happy about the elections in Georgia and the Senate being taken, by the Democrats, I hope to God you're right. I hope you're right. And I will hope, I will believe, and I will continue, and we will continue in Unblinded to be a source for truth, to be a source of positive acceleration. And people like Anil Gupta, thank you for the things that you've said of late. I couldn't be more grateful. And I had a conversation with somebody last night and saying, we need a third political party. Tyler, like speaking to that, how do you feel about the two-party system? Like what's present for you about that?
No other country follows that. Like if you go to the UK or Germany or Italy, there are many different political parties that there's like 5 or 6 major ones. Usually 2 that are the most important, like Conservative and Labour in the UK, but there's other ones that those parties need to work with in order to execute the will of the people. And that allows all the different parties to have wildly different views. Like in no other country would Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders or Rand Paul and Donald Trump be in the same party.
Say that
They would
again. Just elaborate for a second on that, so people.
So if we're comparing this to, say, Germany, like Bernie Sanders would be in the Socialist Party as a socialist. Joe Biden would be probably in the Conservative Democratic Party, which is the main party that Angela Merkel is in. And you would probably see Rand Paul in, I think they call it the Liberal Democratic Party, but basically the German equivalent of the Libertarian Party. And then Donald Trump would be in the AfD, which is the more right-wing populist party. So you would have 4 different parties between those 4 people instead of just 2. And you would have much greater diversity of thought and ability for people to vote and still have their votes matter. And so it wouldn't be a constant struggle between 2 divided sides. It would be more like many groups. Like in other countries, we talk about, or they use the phraseology, forming a government. After each UK election, they have to form a government if no one party has a majority. That means parties need to work together across ideologies. Like the Conservative or Labour Party will have to work with the Green Party, or I forget the other, like the Scottish National Party, I think is what it's called. So there's more cooperation and diversity of voting and thinking in every other country. And that is why our 2-party system lends itself to such division, is because it's more like a sporting event. It's 2 sides, 2 teams, every single time. Libertarians Party's a joke, Green Party's a joke. I voted for a Libertarian candidate in the last election, but I knew that was a joke vote. And so, yeah, the 2-party system is just not conducive to any sort of progress or unity moving forward.
Yeah. And then even within those divisions, Ty, like you've been a fan of meaningful regulation as it relates to COVID, which might run. Is that, I'm just curious actually, is that consistent with the Libertarian Party or it's not?
Ask that one more time, sorry.
Yeah. So you've been a big fan of regulation related to COVID and been deeply troubled by COVID and what's occurred.
Mm-hmm.
In the Libertarian Party, where do they sit on regulation around COVID?
Probably not good enough. Probably not. That wasn't really part of their platform in this election. I think they intentionally left that out, but I would suspect that it would not be up to my standards, what I would do as president or a leader.
So I think what I'm present to is that question is a perfect example of the fact that even in a more expanded party, so the more expanded party system would create a meaningful differential of choice versus, like Ty said, like 2 teams against each other, right? And even in that, there's going to be division and different perspectives. Just like Ty said, like, so he might have voted for a Libertarian candidate and wanted more COVID regulation, and that would be potentially inconsistent with other people in that party. It's how we resolve those conversations, because we're going to disagree. There's an endless amounts of ideas. Hell, we have different ideas about what should be in a communication pattern of emphasis. Like the micro distinctions that we can agree or disagree about are endless, endless. The penultimate question is how we resolve them and how we communicate about them. And I'm going to just one more like lightning bolt. You tell me that Nancy Pelosi, Donald Trump, or Chuck Schumer communicate in a higher vibrational way. You tell me that with a straight face. And these are our leaders. It's reprehensible. And that is what I propose we are unified against. And yes, there's moments like, let's go. Yes, for sure. But where are the acknowledgments of the left and the right about all the things they're doing suboptimally? When do you hear Donald Trump say that? When do you hear Nancy Pelosi say that? When do you hear Chuck Schumer say that? And isn't that a part of leadership? Is acknowledging your imperfections instead of deflecting every time to point at the other people? Isn't that part of what you love about being here? Is the authenticity, the transparency. And isn't that how you are choosing to lead in your life? This is not the WWE, WWF from back in my day. It is not a sporting event. This is about the future of our nation. The energy, the vibration, the pride of the Star-Spangled Banner, of miracle, of higher possibility, of fighting against tyranny, of fighting for truth and fairness and equity, perfectly and perfectly. So what I would ask is throw in the chat, how are you going to communicate about this issue? What is your communication about what happened yesterday and our nation going forward? Make a decision. And whatever it is, it's yours. But make a decision and put a flag in the ground around it. And it was difficult for me yesterday, difficult to not think about, you know what happened? And by the way, I'm not a Republican. Let's be clear. I was thrilled when Bill Clinton was president. I think he did an outstanding job. I think Ronald Reagan did an outstanding job. I think George Bush was suboptimal, in my humble opinion. And I think a lot of things that Barack Obama did were suboptimal. And I was thrilled when he was elected president because he wasn't white. I was thrilled. And he went to Columbia, where I went to school. But there were things that happened during his presidency that were very painful for my heart, including what happened in Benghazi during an election. And that was deeply troubling. And that's a whole longer story for a different day. But in this, let's not be consumed. Let's be independent, individualized thinkers, but who don't resist truth just because of being individualized. I'll say it again. Let's be individualized and unique thinkers, but let's not disagree about everything just to be different. Let's align, and let's always anchor on, like, what do we align on? And then we can begin to talk about, with rapport, with alignment, the things we may disagree upon. And if our government, and we need to begin to demand that of our government, to demand that of our government. That's what we need to do. And you go, well, I'm not really interested. I just want more money, less time, more magic. That is awesome. That is awesome. Then my only proposal would be to think long and hard before you join into any rhetoric. If you're not going to be meaningfully invested in the truth, then don't serve the rhetoric. Don't step into what social media is doing around all of this. Ty, any final thoughts from your heart on what your hope would be for how you'll approach this going forward? What's your flag in the ground about how you're going to go forward today and approach this communication and how you think about these issues?
I think relentless fact checking of my own positions is what I will be consuming myself with, because honestly, I've seen some troubling things in the chat on this huddle, and it's not truthful sometimes. Yeah, and it's not anyone's fault because we've all been shown so many different lies and things throughout the last since social media came into existence. And so there's no judgment of anyone, but it's more important now than ever to dig through everything you think is factually accurate. Look it up, watch both sides, because watching Fox News or CNN is not the answer. It's watching both and watching fact checkers and watching commentary. So truth is really what I am present to more than anything else. Just digging through all the layers of everything that we've been talking about and getting down to what will actually help this country moving forward. And so
And
that's what's present for me.
thank you. And just two things real quick. First, I love all of you. And this is in service of truth. And Robert Cialdini and the comments that Rob clicks off, right, about the 6 persuasion. Commitment and consistency. Commitment and consistency is one of the reasons that we continue to believe what we believe. Like, it is very difficult. It was very difficult for me to believe that JFK, that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. I was very interested in that my whole childhood into adulthood. Like, when the JFK movie came out, I was thrilled. And I was like into every part of it. And then slowly over time, I came to realize that all you need to do to convince somebody of a lie is tell one lie. My Uncle Jimmy, his skis up there, taught me based on one false assumption, one, you could prove anything to be true. There were people who, when I was growing up, who all of a sudden didn't like me anymore when my kids were little. And the one guy's story that started the entire thing was that I walked by him and didn't shake his hand. And he was right, because I was blind and I didn't see him put his hand out. And I didn't see him. And he decided that I was aloof and being disrespectful and condescending to him. And then he started telling people that I thought I was better than them. And then the newspaper article came out after the jury verdict. I literally told that story. And all these people in Emerson, it wasn't like that it spread over town, but with a pocket of people I was coaching with, it became like a thing, right? Like a few years before. And after that happened, all these people all of a sudden started coming up to me like, "Hey, Sean, it's Joe. Hey, Sean, it's Jerry." And these are some people who hadn't like spoken to me in a while because I couldn't see who was at games and I talked to them. And people started coming up to me because the false assumption was that I didn't want to say hello because I was being not friendly, when I just literally didn't see who the person was and that I knew them. And wasn't going to stop every person that I walked by and go, "Hey, I'm not sure who you are, but who are you?" As I'm walking past 100 people coming in and out of a game. One false assumption, we can prove everything true. And once we hold a belief, if you want to look into your own thought process, look at Influence by Robert Cialdini. Go to the chapter on commitment and consistency. Once you say a thing, your brain and nervous system are wired to look for things to make yourself right instead of changing your perspective. That is a scientific fact. So in speaking into this today, we had a choice. Just avoid the issue. And that's what I think most people would recommend. We're never going to avoid the issue, and we're not making anybody wrong. My empathy is huge. And I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth. It wouldn't take me a lot to storm the Capitol building myself. And that's the truth. I would die for this country. I would die for truth. When Desert Storm was happening, I had a conversation at Pizza Hut with one of my buddies, actually Tom Flatico. We spoke about enlisting. But there were no weapons of mass destruction. And that was a lie too. And we almost, I wanted to enlist. I couldn't with my vision. I wouldn't have been taken. but we actually talked about enlisting to fight for our country in a situation because we thought there were these terrorists with weapons of mass destruction. And there were none. And it was a lie. So there is so, and final on this. When I was in the state, corruption is real. So I am not delusional to think that people wouldn't want to steal the election. What I am present to is what it would take to do it and hide it. The hiding of it in light of election monitors, the positions of the United States Supreme Court after reviewing papers, Republican federal judges, Republican state judges, Republican attorney general. Why would all of these people, who held the conspiracy meeting to convince all of these people to ignore it? Who called me and said to say this today? It's people looking at the evidence and facts. How many games have we watched in football? The ref screwed us. The ref was paid off. The ref wasn't paid off. The ref wasn't paid off. Maybe in 0.0001% of the situations was the ref paid off. One in like 10 million. And in this case, there would have been 100 refs paid off, and God would have deleted everything electronically in the world to have caused this to actually occur and be hidden. And if you, for one day, want to get through this emotionally, take an entire weekend and look to reverse your thinking. And maybe I just had this blessing and privilege in law school, would have to argue one side, the next day argue the opposite side. That was one positive. Actually, it wasn't even law school, it was moot court. So I'd have to argue the opposite position. So I could literally see through truth. Try that for the weekend. Whatever is most upsetting to you, take the opposite position, step into their shoes, and look to debunk what you think. There's strength in that. There's truth in that. There's leadership in that. There's power in that. And I was offered $100,000 as a retainer to join this fight. And I said, let's look into this. And I would have done it for no money, but $100,000 for the firm, it's business. I have people that run a business. I'm like, I can't do this. And I'm the one that fought for conspiracies, the improbable, the impossible, in situations that were not our nation and the election of our president at stake. I would have done it. My mom, my aunts believed the election was stolen. I love them. I believe in 99% of the same things they believe in. And the night of the election, I thought the election was stolen. I was outraged. I was incredulous. And if we cannot agree on that, I hope you don't hold that against me. I know my heart and I love you. And that all I want is truth and light. And that's what we at Unblinded want. And thank you for this platform. Thank you for this opportunity. Adam and Fernando and Tyler, thank you. I love you. And by the way, Make America Great Again, hat wearing, Donald Trump thrilled when electedness present. And I am so proud of you, Tyler, that nobody can shape your beliefs. Not a social media site, not a politician, not your college professors, not your classmates, not even your parents. And the beacon and seeker of truth that you are, I am very proud of you and love you. And you are perfectly imperfect. And thank you for spending a lot of time last night in service of this community and your love for it and truth. And I appreciate it very much, pal.
Well, thank you. Love you.
Love you. Adam, final.
When you asked Tyler what was the first thing that he's going to do from here, and he just said, continue relentless fact checking. I'm not on either side other than the side of the truth. And I talk about never having to guess what I'm thinking. Sean, you truly exemplify and demonstrate never having to guess what you are thinking. And that is the most unbelievable characteristic of somebody with integrity that I've ever met in my entire life.
And I will stand always. I sued the town Little League because they wouldn't let other kids practice on the field because they had significance about the Little League All-Star team. And that was not a popular decision to make. I will be the first person off the boats into the line of fire. And if anybody could show me something truthful that this election was stolen, I would have run headlong into the fire. And that's what I did in Arizona I took a case I didn't need to take without getting paid after the first year for the work we were doing monthly. Like, it was mostly on a contingency. It was an unbelievable suck of my time and energy. When I say I missed 9 games, 5 of them were Tyler's sophomore year of varsity baseball in that trial because I saw injustice. And my desire to step into the line of fire for one person would be 1/1,000,000th of it for our nation, because I love our nation. And I cry every time I watch Miracle. I get emotional every time I listen to the Star Spangled Banner. Every time. I love this nation and what it is and what it stands for in the world. And if we can unify on that, our love for this nation going forward, then we all win. Fernando?
Tyler, once again, thank you for coming in here with facts and truth. It has certainly been a very heart-centered, felt conversation, and I am grateful to be on the side of truth with leaders like the both of you, Gugino, and the rest of this movement.
And I thank Cal Law, because we had teammates at Cal Law looking up things. Michael Smikin, thank you for spending time last night talking. You know, there's been a lot since the election happened. A lot of people I've talked to about a lot of things. And, you know, and there's no trying to be right, but just giving you things to think about. Rudy Giuliani is an incredible lawyer. He's a patriot. He was one of his leadership in 9/11 was unparalleled in a crisis dynamic. His turnaround of New York City. I used to go to Yankee games with my dad, and I was not a Yankee fan, but he had tickets to work, and we walked through the South Bronx, and it was horrifying. It was absolutely insane. It was the scariest thing I can remember from my childhood that I experienced outside my home, was walking to our car after a Yankee game on several occasions. It was unsettlingly, frighteningly insane. And if you didn't live it and never walked it, you don't even know what I'm talking about. It was crazy. The dysfunction, the chaos, the people running down the street with gasoline cans, screaming. It was absolute anarchy, like, you know, Escape from New York, post-apocalyptic insanity. And I walked those streets of Manhattan up 42nd Street and the horrors that was in 1992 when I first came out of Columbia and worked for a year for a bank in New York City. And then I saw its turnaround. And Rudy Giuliani has done so many great things for New York City and our nation. And he's an incredibly smart dude. And if he had facts, you'd be hearing him. And he knows how to do that. They just don't exist. And that's why you're not hearing him. And I have empathy for all the people who took all the positions. And Ted Cruz, I don't agree with his positions. I don't agree with why he's doing it. I don't think he's being, you know, truthfully forthcoming with what he's doing and positions he's taken and how it will potentially benefit down the road and his perception of it. But they're not talking about facts. They're talking about vagaries, unverified conspiracy dynamics, which we have fact checked. And we didn't just fact check and like look at what they said on Google. Like, I've used my brain. I've used my ability to uncover conspiracies and fraud schemes and Ponzi schemers and the things I've done. And there is just nothing that would have changed the outcome of this election. And that's why the Attorney General, the Supreme Court, the federal judges, forget the Democrats, forget all the bias, have said no across the board, including the Vice President of the United States, who's a good man, right? So love you all. Have an incredible day. And let's go back to Bruce Springsteen's song After 9/11 and us coming back in the rising. And we will stand on that podium And we have to stand united. We have to stand united. And we will continue to fight against corruption and to find it, but from a higher vibrational communication place. That's the call to the causing of leadership that I offer. And guys, for those that are new, this is not what the huddle sounds like on a normal daily basis. I know there's some new people here today. But we step into what's present and let's go forward. Let's not be distracted. Let's not be distracted. Let's cause unity. Let's cause moving forward in positive ways. Let's cause love. And we find and see corruption. Let's bring it here and talk about it. But let's spend 99% of our time talking about solutions and 1% talking about problems, about everything. Love you guys. I'm very grateful for this space today. So Chaz, let's hit it. Have a beautiful day.
Can't see nothing coming up.